any other areas where there may be budgets that are open to deliberation. Thanks.
Last one. Neil Pickering from the Homes and Communities Agency. I'm the head of area for Lancashire and Cumbria. For those of you who don't know the agency, we support housing, the development of housing, and also the creation of more viable and attractive places. And that boils down to sort of three broad areas that we get involved with. Supporting and delivering affordable housing, particularly in areas like Cumbria. Also involved in many urban regeneration projects across the country, particularly in the northwest. And we're also quite heavily involved in key areas of the country where there's a desire to grow and expand housing and economies. So we have quite a broad remit. And I'm here today particularly interested in obviously the affordable housing issues that we face. As a national organisation, we're going to change in the future. We're going to become more enabling, we're going to be smaller, we'll have less resources, but we'll have much more flexibility about how we can react to circumstances. At a national level, we are working very hard to see how we can adapt how we do things. We are a large organisation, we are bureaucratic, and we know we have to adapt how we do things. So we've got working groups looking at how we simplify our processes, how we look at how financing can be adjusted and tweaked to support very local delivery, and also looking at how we can use our land and other public land more creatively to unlock housing from the bottom up. I think in a northwest level, we are working very hard at how we support what we're trying to achieve in Cumbria. We've got one particular project in Crosby Ravensworth which we're using as a project where we can really test how we're reacting and how we're working and how we're operating, and hopefully we'll get that project over the line. I think in terms of our sector, there's a couple of statistics that are quite important. I think in some of our European countries, in Sweden, for example, 18% of housing is owned by co-ops and mutually owned organisations. Nearby in Ireland, 4%, but in the UK, only 0.5% of the housing stock. So we've got a big job to do to try and facilitate an expansion of that area. And in terms of why I'm here to listen. I'm here to explain and answer questions as best I can. But more than anything, I'm here to learn.
Firstly, many thanks due to all these people. In the 5 minutes before we go on Sue, just for the sake of some of you who weren't in the last meeting, and I apologise to those of you who were, just to bring you up to date on what this thing called big society means. Big society ought to mean what is happening in this room. Big society is not, as some people might imagine, a pot of money or an object like the big lottery fund to which you write a donor application, apply, and from which you get support. Big society is an activity, and it's an activity whereby communities are trusted to know more, care more, have more creative solutions than people in London or Brussels or even sometimes in Calais. The notion in this room is that every single one of you knows more about your individual area than almost any of us on this stage. And what we are here to do is to try to shift the balance of power away from the center and to decentralize radically, push power down to the parish level. How does that work? Well, it works in 3 ways. Firstly, it's going to be a question of power. Secondly, it's going to be a question of laws. And thirdly, and most importantly, it's going to be a question of knowledge. What do I mean by power? Well, what I mean by power is who has the right to do something? Who has the money to do something? And to put that in the most concrete terms possible, Gareth is talking about planning. What Gareth is working on, and what the new localism bill will be working on, is the idea that local communities are given more rights, more power, more control over planning in their own area, within their own parish, within their own community plan. Money. Right, this is a central issue too. Hugh is looking at ways in which you can access money. risk money, capital money, working capital money, because of course most of these projects are going to need some kind of support. If they're good projects, it should be support in the form of a soft loan rather than necessarily a grant. If these are properly sustainable projects, they should be projects which are able eventually to generate an income stream. Otherwise, probably we shouldn't be embarking on them. There are certain kinds of social goods which government gets involved in, which does involve one-time subsidy that never gets paid back, but not the kind of project that communities necessarily want to get involved in. If we're building a community hall, if we're putting solar panels on the roof, if we're putting in a hydropower scheme, these projects should be able to pay themselves back over time, hence risk capital, working capital, investment capital. The next set of issues around this, and this comes back to Oliver and what he's doing on participatory budgeting, is about communities looking at assets that already exist. At the most obvious level, it could be that you might want to build a bicycle path in Ravensdale, and you might think there's a pot of money out there and you might want to access it. But it could be other kinds of assets too. It could be, for example, Bang here in Great Asby. Bang here in Great Asby, there is a fat pipe of fibre optic cabling, paid for largely by the government, running into the school. That's our cable. It's a public asset. And participating in it, participatory processes in relation to it would involve you saying, we would like access to that. We could use it for the community. And the government saying, all right, we can break out of that cable, we can build a cabinet here in the village hall, we can set up a Wi-Fi network, and suddenly the entire community is able to benefit from something that, in a sense, we paid for in the first place. Rural proofing. That is central to this room. The entire conversation about rural proofing is central because this is the most sparsely populated part of the most sparsely populated district and the most sparsely populated constituency in England. So many of our problems and so many of our solutions are about overcoming the barrier of distance. That could be about broadband. Why broadband? Everyone's talking about broadband all the time. Why broadband? Well, because I'm talking to people from Parkinson's UK who currently have to drive all the way to Newcastle to meet a consultant. Just to meet. No fancy test, just to have a chat. That could be done so much more easily through a live video link straight from their home. There is absolutely no reason for somebody with Parkinson's to have to drive all the way to Newcastle. There are other health applications. There are other education applications. Increasingly, so much of the schoolwork in our schools is predicated on the assumption that people can access fast internet links. Businesses. We have more self-employed people than any other constituency in Britain. More than 20% of the people at the border work from home. If we are to keep these communities alive, if we're to keep young children in these communities, we keep our shops, our pubs, we need to have the broadband to make that happen. But there are other things, and this is where Keith comes in, that we need to do. Even in the most extraordinary cyber world, we're still going to have to move around occasionally and meet people. We're going to have to occasionally transport ourselves. We're going to have to overcome the barriers of distance by more conventional means, which is where Keith comes in. And we're going to have to keep ourselves going. We're going to need some energy, whether we're running a broadband network or simply keeping the lights on in the village hall, which is where we get on to issues around renewable energy. It could be Matt talking about hydropower, or indeed other issues related to the rivers, which are so central to this area. It's no accident that all the projects we're doing here are named after rivers. Right? Heart of Eden, Upper Eden, Lybenet, every community plan is named after a river. It is rivers that essentially makes this constituency. But where Stephen comes in is looking at other areas also of renewable energy. And finally, our houses. The affordable housing schemes which Neil is talking about are probably, I would say, the biggest issue in this entire constituency. Affordable housing, more than anything else, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a small business person, whether you're trying to keep something going in the village, the lack of affordable housing is crippling us. We need to get affordable housing in place. So, to conclude, those are the areas of expertise on this table. But the real expertise is in this room, because I talked about power, by which I meant having rights to do things, having money to do things. talked about the laws that go with them. But the most important thing is the knowledge, and that is what is in this room. Nobody on this stage knows anything like as much about the individual communities and individual problems as everybody in this room does. So let us please, over the next 4, 6, 9, 12 months, prove here, in Penrith and the Border, that we can show the rest of the country how this is going to work. To use all our patience, all our resilience, and all our knowledge. Thank you all very much, and enjoy your soup.